In this video, we're going to look at the 5 most common questions that are asked in Morrisons interviews, and I'm going to help you plan fantastic answers that will land you a job with Morrisons. Let's start with a question that Morrisons are pretty much guaranteed to ask, which is what shifts can you do? And this question is problematic, and a lot of people completely screw up this question. So I'm going to show you how not to screw it up, and also remember that this question usually is one of the most important questions for determining who gets the job. So, first thing you're going to do is make sure you're honest. There's no point lying about your availability because that's not going to help you when you're offered the job and then you start refusing all your shifts and they get rid of you. So, to be successful in this question, once you've got over the hurdle of making sure you're honest at the start, you're going to show off as much flexibility as you possibly can. And you're going to show that you're committed to Morrisons and that you take your job very seriously. The way that people screw this question up is they start listing all of the times they can't do and then say, I can do all the other times, which is the wrong way to approach it. You ought to be showing that you can do this and you can do that, and these times are great, and showing that you're totally committed and that you're going to be there when they need you. So some things that Morrisons really like to hear, they like to hear that you can work evenings. And this list, just start reeling these off, say these things, and you will see the person interviewing you kind of nodding and being like, this is someone we probably want to give the job to. So you got evenings, weekends, especially on Sundays, definitely worth mentioning. When the store opens early in the morning, if you're fine with getting up early, that's normally your thing. Say, I'm quite happy to work very early in the morning, right when the store opens. And for certain stores that are 24 hours or petrol stations, which can run 24 hours, saying that you're happy to work night shifts is also a really great asset to the company. So by saying the times that are difficult to staff, your chance of getting the job goes up significantly. So really what you're trying to do is you're trying to show Morrisons a can-do attitude. And the chances are you're going to reel off loads of times that you can do and then go on to the next question. They're unlikely to ask you about, can you work Thursday afternoon? Because why would they be so interested in that specific time slot? But if you say, I can't work Thursdays, you've just brought up the negatives. So show them a can do attitude and you'll be successful in this question. And this question often does massively decide whether you get the job or not. Let's move on to the next question, which is, what can you tell me about Morrisons? And they may not ask this question directly in that way, but they are going to be interested in your knowledge. And also, if you can get some of these points in during your interview, it shows that you've done the research and you've done your hard work. So if you've worked hard preparing, for example, watching this video, and you go into your interview and you can show that, then they're going to think this is someone that works hard and probably should give them the job because they're going to be prepared and trustworthy. So let's look at some key facts that you should get in. You know, they've took over Safeways. That's how they grew the business. The Morrisons family have substantial influence and ownership in the company. You can talk about some of the brands that they've got. So they've got the M brand, the Morrisons own brand. You've got Nutmeg, which is their clothing brand. Morrisons generally operates in very large stores. You don't get very many Morrisons convenience stores. A lot of those, they were pretty much shut down. So you're talking about big format stores. They are big on value. They manufacture a large proportion of their own stuff. So a lot of the stuff that's stamped with Morrisons is actually made by the company themselves. So that's what we call vertical integration. So from producing the food to selling it, they're working all the way through that. And you can also mention, just a good fact is that it's a FTSE 100 company, which basically means it's a very, very big company and the 100 largest on the stock market. And getting in these facts wherever you can is really useful and shows that you've done your preparation and you know what you're talking about. And my top tip is read Morrisons' annual report. You won't find better information about Morrisons in more detail with more up-to-date and relevant information anywhere else. So just search that up, have a read of it, and you will know so much about the business. So let's go on to a question that also comes up all the time in retail, which is, how would you deal with an angry or upset customer? And if you work in retail for a long time, this is going to happen to you. So the first word that you're going to get in your answer is the word de-escalation. Just say that word and they immediately know that you've kind of got the right idea. You're then going to talk about how you're going to stick to Morrisons policies. Just because you're angry and upset doesn't mean that there's a totally different returns policy for you. You still have to follow the company's procedures. But while you're doing it, you're always going to be showing empathy. And empathy is another great word to get in your answer. That I'm going to show empathy towards the customer. I'm going to be listening to them. And I'm trying actively to resolve the situation and remaining calm at all times. And the last thing you're going to say is that throughout this interaction, you're going to make Morrisons look good. Because there'll be other people in the store that are looking at this because they've heard the noise, for example, and they're going to be looking straight at the Morrisons employee to see how they're dealing with it and are they being professional. And so you're going to show the best face of Morrisons and that face of professionalism. And if you do that, you're reassuring the person interviewing you that you know what to do and you're going to behave appropriately. The last thing to make absolutely clear, and just say this flat out, that you will never ever argue back or raise your voice. And if you do that, you're reassuring them that you're going to behave appropriately. So get those ideas into your answer and you will absolutely succeed on that question. So let's look at the next question, which is strengths and weaknesses. And again, this is one that sometimes is asked directly, whereas other times it's worth learning anyway, because when you get the opportunity, you're going to make sure you mention your strength. And if you're asked about a weakness, you're going to have something prepared because that's one that you can screw up. So when we think about strength, you're going to start with something that is totally genuine. You have to actually have that strength, because when you're quizzed on it later, if you don't really have that strength, you're not going to stand up to questioning very well. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure that it's supported with evidence. If you've got evidence of that strength, it is so much more powerful in an interview. And the last thing, and the most important, is that it must actually be relevant to Morrisons. There's no point saying how amazing you are at doing Sudokus. They don't care. So make sure it's something relevant. So here's an example. I have experience of supporting and mentoring new employees, which was commented on by my previous line manager in my reference. So there's the evidence from the reference and a really great fact that Morrisons can immediately see how that would be useful. So it just has to be something, perhaps working with customers, customer relations, some qualifications that you have, anything that is evidenced and definitely important to Morrisons. And that will get you a successful answer to this question. The next one is weakness, and this question is often answered extraordinarily bad. So you should always go into an interview with this answer prepared. Because if it comes up, you can screw up the interview if you do it wrong. So you can start by actually giving a real weakness. So the classic thing is people say that I'm a perfectionist or something along those lines, which is just a load of rubbish. That's not a weakness, and it's just a form of bragging, and it makes you look like an idiot. So don't use a fake weakness. So make sure your example is a real, genuine weakness. Most importantly, you're going to actually be doing something about it. And it's also something that is not going to bother Morrisons. You know, they're going to see your weakness and it's not really going to affect the hiring decision. So if you were to say something like, sometimes I come across a little rude, so you're coming across rude to customers, they are not going to give you that job. So if you say something that is important to the job as a weakness, that's going to rule you straight out. So the format for an answer to this question is the weakness I am aware of is, and then you're going to say, when at Morrisons, I would work on this by. So you've got my weakness is this, and then you take control of the conversation and you talk at length about what you're going to do about it. So what support you're going to use, how you're going to learn from Morrisons, what training you believe you need. All these things is so much better than focusing on, I have this weakness and it is so debilitating. So focus on what you're doing, and that's a great way to answer the question. Let's move on to the last question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? They may ask the 5 years question. They may say, what are you looking for throughout your career over the next few years, or some other version of that. But they're probably going to be interested in trying to suss out whether you're going to be here for 5 minutes or a long time and what you're actually trying to get out of your employment. So you're going to start by giving an answer that is credible. You're not going to be talking about becoming the chief executive in 5 years or anything ridiculous. So it has to be sensible and believable. You have to have also thought about what the process is, what you're going to be doing at each stage. You're going to have a basic roadmap, and you're also going to mention the development opportunities that are available at Morrisons. And one classic example is shadowing and learning from the person that is doing the one level above. So some things you might want to mention is that you are looking for a little bit more responsibility in 5 years' time. you can discuss what the road is to one level above. So take the level you're applying to now, and what is the next step above, and how do you get there in 5 years' time. But you don't have to be wanting progression. You can talk about being exceptional in your current role. And a good example for this is that you're looking to stay in the same role, but in 5 years' time, you might be interested in helping a new employee that you would hope to be someone that management would decide to buddy the new person up with to learn the ropes. The way to screw up this question is to do something that is not credible. The worst thing you can do is basically insult the interviewer. So saying in 5 years' time, I want to be a store manager when you're being interviewed by an assistant manager and a deputy manager. So you're basically saying in 5 years' time, I'm going to be your boss and above you because I'm better than you. That's not going to go down well. And the worst thing you can do is talk about a 5 year plan that really is not of interest to Morrison, so that you're going to go away and become a landscape gardener. Well, they're not really that interested in that. And the even worse thing is to talk about leaving Morrisons. That, oh, I'm just want to work here for 1 year and then I'm going to get a real good job, or something that's arrogant and condescending like that. So do not mention leaving, even if you only want to work in grocery for a year or 6 months. The interview is not the best time to talk about that. You don't necessarily need to say, I will stay here 10 years. You just want to talk about the skills you're going to develop over 5 years' time, and you're looking to get more responsibility in general. But do not talk about leaving the company. And so the last thing that I hope will be very useful to you is I've got some suggestions of some questions you may want to ask at the end of the interview. If at the end of the interview you have no questions to ask, that looks very, very bad, and in many cases just screws the whole interview. So I would recommend that you memorize a couple of these. The ones that I'll draw your attention to is the one which is on the bottom left. What should a new employee at Morrisons do to maximize their impact on joining? So this is a good question for saying to them, what would you like someone to do, and what are you looking for in an employee? And then when you reply after the answer, you can basically talk about how you're going to do exactly what they're looking for. So you've elicited what they want, and then you confirm to them that I am exactly what you're looking for, and it ends the interview on a really strong positive note. And the last thing you're going to make sure that you do is that you're going to be listening throughout the interview, and you're going to be thinking up a question, and the question that you ask is going to be directly related to something that came up. So it's proving that you're listening to the person on the other side, you're engaged and you're interested. And if you do that, it looks very good. And so finally, thank you very much for watching. I wish you the best of luck in your Morrisons interview, and I hope you check out some of my other videos. Thank you very much.